Carla, what is something in your life that you have had to reframe for yourself?
Are you tired of hearing about the restaurant?
Does that matter? No, I am not tired of hearing about the restaurant.
All right, so my restaurant had good food, check. Great staff, check. All of the branding and the physical, the vision that we had that we saw manifest in the space, check. None of that mattered. All of those things that took it down, or all of the reasons that it failed, had nothing to do with those three things.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, like what? But but I was asked to write a speech for the National Restaurant Association.
Was this after the restaurant had failed?
Yes.
Okay.
So after the restaurant failed. And I'm like, what? Me? I mean, my restaurant was alive for a year.
Yeah. And I love that word, alive. Right? That's such a beautiful way to describe it, is it was alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inside you and outside of you.
And I chose that specifically because it was alive. It was a being. It was a living and breathing being. And I felt like I didn't have anything to offer. Because I'm like, what am I going to tell people about restaurants? But I do know that when I had given speeches that were really about my struggles, my challenges, I find it powerful. So I wrote this speech, and thinking that I really didn't have anything to offer. I don't know what you all are wanting from me, but this is what I can offer. And in writing that speech, I realized how many things I had learned from that experience.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I learned about recipe development. I learned about staffing and understanding how to put together a staff. I learned about the financial woes and highs and lows of a restaurant, being an owner, right? So I learned all these things, and I entitled the speech "When My Restaurant Failed." You know, like
well, you just put it out there. Yeah.
No shame. And it was so well received.
Yeah. Say more about why you think it was so well received.
I didn't realize the impact until I was at a restaurant in Nashville, and I had gone in, and one of the cooks came out and said, "Dude, I saw your speech on YouTube or wherever he saw it at the National Restaurant Association, NRA. Thank you."
Oh, wow.
I was just blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did I have to sort of reframe this experience and see that I learned something. It wasn't all the trauma that I was holding, but I had learned something. People had responded and helped me with that reframe.
Yeah, so you did it in community.
Yes.
As opposed to just individually.
Yes.
Yeah, you had to do the individual work to allow the community to receive you and partner with you in that, I imagine.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think it was about them appreciating that I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And I think for many people, and especially for people of a certain stature and status, they think things just go well for them.
Yes.
Right? That things are handed to them, things just go well, that they don't have failures and setbacks and challenges. And so you've helped people reframe how to think of people in the public eye by doing that as well.
Yes.
How has that changed your relationship with people in public?
I think it says to them, there is no shame. I'm a real person. You're a real person. People go through things.
I just want to say that one of the things that we know is that shame kills. Right? Yeah. So shame isn't I did something wrong. Shame is I am someone wrong. And we don't want people to feel shame.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for being a part of that. That's so important. Yeah.
Also, one of the things that I talked about and that I saw in writing this speech was it highlighted all of the good things that came out of it. Mm-hmm. I remember having a conversation about my chicken. So I'd done food on Goldbelly. Mm-hmm. And so you give them the recipes, they make the food, and we go back and forth. Well, I couldn't travel to where they were making the chicken. So I'm talking to the chef on the phone. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, this is what I did. I'm like, did your chicken look like this?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. I said, okay, well then you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
I said, what about, did you brine it in liquid and mm-hmm. did the skin come up off of it? And I said, well, basically what you did, you introduced moisture and you created a pocket of air and, in between the skin and the chicken mm-hmm. is going to fall off. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for the hundreds of times I went through making chicken for my restaurant, I wouldn't have been able to have this conversation over the phone and tell him exactly. Like, you tell me how your recipe went wrong, I'm sure I have a response because I've been through it.
That's right. So those 100 times that you made it for the restaurant, they weren't 99 times perfect, right? Yeah. There was a lot of iterating along the way. Mm-hmm. And how did you reframe the chicken that didn't turn out well all those times? How did you reframe that so that it felt like it was part of the process and progress rather than I keep screwing this up?
It was the value. I learned something every time.
Yeah.
Every time I changed an ingredient, I learned why that ingredient worked. Mm-hmm. Every time something didn't work, I'm like, okay, what changed? Yeah. Because we were also in recipe development, you only change one thing at a time.
So you fiddle with a variable at a time rather than all the variables.
Yes. And it's interesting as you're talking about that, how in our lives, we just throw so much at us, at ourselves, not one variable at a time. And mm-hmm. sometimes it's really hard to understand what needed to change or what didn't need to change. Yeah. We change everything. And Carla, that reminds me of something that you and I have talked about before, which is your not just willingness, but your hunger for feedback and how you have reframed feedback. Can you just say a little bit about how you see feedback? Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, either in an assessment, like where I'm doing a test mm-hmm. or on Top Chef where I'm getting, verbal feedback. Feedback makes me better. Mm-hmm. I feel like I like efficiency.
Yes, okay.
Feedback helps my learning more efficient.
What a great way, a great reframe to think about this is I'm going to get better faster as a result of this feedback. Yeah. And if you imagine, we probably don't have to imagine that hard because we probably know people like this. If you can imagine somebody who takes feedback quite personally and quite defensively, but we know that feedback is how people learn and get better, mm-hmm. what would you tell them to help them reframe feedback?
My first thing is, what is your why? Where do you want to go? Mm-hmm. And how do you expect to get there?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because without the feedback and being alone and by yourself, it's really hard to get there.
Yes. Well, that often makes me think of the feedback, the very frequent feedback I get from my GPS every time I make a wrong turn.
Oh my gosh,
right?
What?
And you know what? It is not judging me. It is just helping me get there more efficiently even when I've made some mistakes along the way.
But doesn't it sound loud? It sounds louder when it's telling you to make a left.
I think you might have reframed something. Yes.
Make a left. And you're making a right. Make a left.
You got a mean GPS, my friend. Yeah. So it really does help provide that direction to help you get to where you want to go, especially if you've already made really clear what your why is for why you want to get there.
Yeah. I also think the why is why sort of investigate and ask yourself why you're taking it personally. Mm-hmm. Because there's a learning there too. Yeah. What haven't you accepted or, so that you can't get to the reframe? Yeah. So I think all of these principles sort of pile on each other, but, and if someone says something to me, if I feel some kind of way about it, it's for me. Mm-hmm. If I don't feel some kind of way about it, it isn't for me, and I let it roll off my back.
Yeah.
And
you're describing something that I love to talk to my clients about, which is that emotions are data, right? So if I'm having an emotion, it is data that there's something that I value that is either being rewarded or threatened here. And if I don't have if I'm not aware of having any sort of emotional experience about it, it's probably not giving me a lot of data. I can move on.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that.
It's yours.
It's data.
It's data.
I love data.
It depends where you come from, right? I'm from New York. We say data.
I know. I love data.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
I really do.
There's a good reframe for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing how you see the world with us, Carla.